Thanks very much, Rohan. In the spirit with which you introduced your talk, the floor is open for debate and dialogue and questions for Rohan. And I'm just also mindful that there'll be a reception later. You'll be able to talk to him informally. He's a most intimidating guy from here, but up close he's a pussycat. So, any comments? Bill Event.
Yeah, Rohan, I think the weakness in your treatment of the nation state is you're considering it really, really very, very abstractly. As even the first slide showed, it's ideological idea. You're not considering the structure of the state in the context of the imperial development of imperialism. So it seems to be a mystery. It seems to be a mystery in your analytical presentation as to what the functions of the state should be. As in your last slide, well, there's a war function and so forth and so on. But these are abstracted from history and they're abstracted from imperialism. The result is that the basic take, qualifying the basic take is that really nation states are disappearing. But there are at least some kinds of things that they can sort of still do, all right? Which is amount to say, just like Negri and a whole bunch of writers have said, imperialism is dead. There are no centers in the world, there are no peripheries in the world, you see. What is to me, funny in a way, is the day-to-day work that you do, the kind of fights that you're engaged in, are full of, in fact, those kinds of problems in the micro. And yet your account of the state, the different models like Mr. Jackson, or who the hell he was up there, right, are pure game theory. That's really what they are. And so, put it this way, I think your fight is admirable, but your model is basically it's a game theory. It's a neoliberal mindset, even though you attempt in practice day to day to fight against that. You know, one of the best sayings that I like from Dallas, which I always remember, he used to say, "You're neutral, hey? Who are you neutral against?" All right? That's completely disappeared from your model. It's not generated from your model at all. Even though in your particular fights, you recognize something about where power was contended with. Who gave you the order? You mentioned, I didn't get it. When you should design the communication systems and stuff like that, to make sure that the companies can get in there and out and so forth and so on. You know, I forgot at some point in the talk. Your practice is better than your theory, which I think is very, very weak. That's the beginning of the problem.
So imperialism. What does imperialism explain among two former colonies of Great Britain, which had actually extremely weak communication links in the past? Because, as you know, imperialist theory says that the center is connected to the peripheries and the peripheries are not connected to each other. So we didn't have very good communications between the two countries. In fact, we get offloaded from Indian planes all the time because there aren't enough planes going through. The ferry service stopped running long years ago. There are no ships to take people across there. So I think one of the reasons I took these two countries is because there is no history of imperialism. These are two countries that just happen to be in geographical proximity. I'm not sure that your imperialism thesis actually informs a lot, even where there have been imperialist relations. Imperialism is one of these terms that explains everything and nothing. But in particular, when you come to two colonies, two former colonies, I don't think it's a very important factor. I mean, we had a president who tried to physically move Sri Lanka into Southeast Asia, going against this proximity argument, and now we are embracing proximity completely, and we're saying, okay, that's integrated. The point I'm trying to make is the very concrete nature of the transportation and communication links that are affected by this services issue. You can look at services in terms of all these little industrialists running around and saying, oh my God, my bread and butter is going to be affected. But what they don't understand is that what services agreements do is that they open up the transportation and communication linkages in a way that is not otherwise done. Once that is done, the whole economic relations are reconfigured. These numbers that I gave you about India being a great trading partner, etc., if I gave you those figures for 5 years ago, different. Actively, we have been trying to suck India into trade.
But Rohan, theoretically, what's new? The Romans built roads all over Western Europe. They were good. They're still there, a bunch of them, as you know.
So that gave you an empire.
In other words, the state function is always the fundamental function is to create the conditions under which the form of extraction of value occurs.
So that theory bill, you see, you set that argument right from the beginning. The Romans built the roads to support their empire. The Sri Lankans are beating up on the Indians to build the roads. The little tiny country that wants to be taken over, more or less. I mean, there's something different going on here. It's not the Romans building the roads. Your thesis, this whole left-wing thesis, is about the centers of power for the purposes of accumulation of capital, extending their claws into the rest of the world. What is going on is the rest of the world is extending their claws into the centers. That is what is unusual about this story. The weaker party is asking for the rules. The weaker party is opening up the communication, transportation links. It's against the conventional wisdom of your story.
That's the American protective model. That's exactly what happened with Saudi Arabia, for example, right? You got enemies, Mr. Saud, and stuff like that, and we'll protect you, and we'll build the infrastructure, and blah, 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 the whole thing like that. In other words, the description that...
So you're still the actor historical.
It's a protection
I'm saying the
matter.
actor is not India. India won't care less. I mean, India can walk away from Sri Lanka anytime. Sri Lanka is saying, hey, we're here. Come and build some roads here.
Yeah, of course, yes, of course. Because you're collaborating.
When I talk to Bill, I know this will go on for 2 days.
Yes,
Same Marxist
but
position.
I'm just reposing his question in a different way.
Oh, that's better.
Because I do agree with his point about you being analyzing, kind of in abstract terms. So on the one hand, in your argument, you were saying the nation state is being attacked, and it's being undermined in many ways. But in your own...
I might say attack, because I don't see any sort of active agents going and destroying them.
Right, but in your own analysis...
It's like the concrete of this classroom complex.
Okay, let me finish if I can. In your own framework of analysis, actually you're still using nation-state analysis. You're saying, for example, in the last sentence, you say the weaker party want to get into the trade agreement, which means Sri Lanka, right? But if can I pose it this way? Rather than, in this case, what I see missing in your analysis is a social analysis within Sri Lanka. Within Sri Lanka who want to trade with India? Can we say that, okay, in this case, the Sri Lanka elite and the India elite and the Chinese elite and the United States elite all realize that through this kind of trade agreement, they will be able to perpetuate, their own unequal power relationships within their own country. So what about the weaker parties within Sri Lanka? You talk about, earlier on, all the political parties in Sri Lanka agree with this treatment. But can I say all those political parties maybe were just from the narrow elite representing their own narrow interest? And how do you account, okay, there's the social unrest. The state is being challenged violently by the social forces within Sri Lanka. So what I'm saying is, what about this transnational class interest, if I will, and how does that come into your framework? Because when you say, okay, in this case, the weaker want to, you talk about Sri Lanka as a weaker state vis-a-vis India. So your own framework of analysis is still the nation state. And what I'm looking for is some concreteness within this Sri Lanka state and across the national border. So in a way, I think my question.
Yeah, I understand your question. I mean, this is one of these no-win questions, because if I tell you that one political party is trying to do this, you will say, okay, there's somebody else opposing it. Then I tell you, the other political party actually put the first step, that is, signed the FTA, the first goods FTA, and is currently not opposing it. That's the main opposition. Then you say, well, there are other interests. So I say, okay, none of those interests are opposing. And again, I directly contrasted with the Canadian case. In the Canadian case, the progressive conservatives under Mulroney wanted the agreement, the liberals yelled and screamed blue murder, the NDP was against it, the civil society groups, there was some lady in Alberta who was going ballistic, Maud, someone, Barlow, right? All these people, there's a huge, okay. So we say then, since we don't have any of those elements in the Sri Lankan case, then we say all the Sri Lankan political parties and all the Sri Lankan civil society organizations are unrepresentative. Because this is some kind of strange, dysfunctional democratic society. They change their governance every so often, but somehow they're impaired. And they do not really express the will of the people. The powerless are disenfranchised, despite the fact that mad people, that they are about 85 or 90% of the eligible voters will vote in every election. And they will change governments every 2-3 years, actually. So then we rule that out. So now we have an unprovable situation. That there is some opposition, because our theory says there has to be opposition. And if we can't find the opposition, we will postulate that it exists. So you win.
But you're saying that there's no one who's not in their interest for Sri Lanka to do this, that everybody in the country is going to benefit from this.
No, I'm not saying that. My God, I even went beyond that, and I said that when it comes down to particular industries like the IT industry, like the architects, like, try opening the agricultural market in Sri Lanka. I mean, they will hang me on a street corner. All these people will have their particular ox's gold. But the overall principle of closer economic integration with India, for which people remember, again, there's a whole lot of history. In fact, I didn't bore you with all the history, but in fact, this whole anti-Indian thing, we have gone through it and we've done. Many people took up arms back in 1987 when the Indians first intervened. So at this point, that we have gone through that catharsis, and we have figured that we need this integration. It seems to be as much of a we are right in the middle of election campaign. Right in the middle of election. They threw everything at each other as they could. But nobody's talking FTA. Nobody's talking the Indian in particular. Because you can't criticize it in Sri Lanka, because everybody's got this idea that the only way you save some semblance of Sri Lanka, right? There's some semblance of calm and peace. And again, I said you can go through the whole gradation of people who don't mind if you carve out the northern province and give it to Elam. People who say, well, even worse comes to worse, let's give them the east too. Or people who want to kill all the Tamils or kill all the militants. All these people, they have this sort of basic understanding that you don't have to deal with India. US, anything else is different. This is a very unique case, where, in fact, through history, I was accused of being ahistorical. Through history, it's that this society has sort of come to this understanding that our only salvation is embeddedness with India. And for me, particularly as somebody who's not lived through all those phases of that process, it was quite a shock, quite surprising for me. Because I have always considered myself to be semi-Indophile, semi-Indophobe. There have been both sides to my personality. And it took a lot of effort to do this. I mean, I can remember just coming from meetings, going and talking to people. I said, what the hell am I doing? I mean, it's a very emotional thing that I've gone through here. But in fact, this seems to be as representative a project that I've ever been involved in. GATS, huge problems. People don't like GATS. People don't like Doha. There's disputes on that. US free trade agreement, not too much.